several people have said to me, well, which is the favourite chapter in the book? It's really quite hard to pull out one particular one. I think the one, if really push came to shove, the one that I would pick out is actually two. It's the two at the end, what to do if you win and what to do if you lose. Because I mean, much as Ed and I love electioneering, love political campaigns and everything that goes with it, really in the end elections are not the important thing in politics. It's what people who get elected to office do. It's how people who get defeated in elections then behave subsequently that is the really important stuff.
Just in my experience, it's so important to have a sense of leadership in a campaign, and someone who leads from the front and inspires and is willing to do what is necessary to essentially change the situation, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about going from a situation where you're not the winner to being one where you are a winner, and that requires the skills and ability and leadership to actually affect that change. And I think that, if I was going to pick one, I think I would look at that.
It's quite a tough one because there are so many different elements that go into an election campaign, but I think the most important elements are that you've got to be able to see yourself as the voters see you. Often politicians and candidates have quite sort of poor self-awareness in that respect. You've also got to build up a good team, that there's almost no election where the candidate can do everything themselves. And I think for the third, I'd throw in the importance of having a really good, strong message, because no matter how effective your organisation, if you've not got a good message to sell, you're not really going to get very far. Loads of examples over the years of campaigns that have apparently been well organised but lacking a good message and then fallen flat on their face. Phil Graham's bid for the US presidential nomination for the Republicans a few years back being a classic of the kind.
All successful election campaigns have got to have two elements to them. They've got to have a forward look in terms of saying this is what we would do going forward, and a story about what's already happened. And I think a big part of the next general election, which if I was a Labour Party strategist I'd be worried about, frankly, is that it will be which coalition party was better at doing coalition. And I can see strands for both the Conservatives and the Lib Dems that they go into the election and say, we made the government a better government because we were in it. And I think that's kind of new territory. And you see it a little bit already, actually, that the Labour Party in terms of the news media doesn't really get a look in, and there is a danger that the Labour Party suffers the same problem in the general election, that it's all about how the coalition performed, and there's plenty of space, I think, for both the Tories and the Lib Dems to have different stories to tell about how they approached coalition and how they ran things.
I think my favourite campaign photo op has to be Ronald Reagan 1984 re-election campaign, where he was sort of photographed at the end of a campaign trail, sat down in a chair, arms crossed, sort of feet up a bit, and the photographer caught the sole of his shoe and there was a hole in the sole of his shoe, and as a photo that encapsulated the message about him not being a sort of posh out of touch person but a hard-working man of the people, had been really burning through the shoe leather on the campaign trail. Brilliant photo op.
Another of the things that we talk about in the book actually is that you have a choice when it comes to strategies, and that there's a real danger in switching strategy because you think the first one isn't working, and it may well be that actually sticking to plan A in terms of, I know that's got kind of sort of connotations in terms of the economy, but I mean in terms of the communication strategy, the political strategy, actually sticking with your first approach and making a success of that is sometimes the right thing to do. And I think there's a danger for both parties actually in the coalition that they set out very, very strongly at the beginning to say, not a cigarette paper of difference between us, we're one coalition government, and then over the space of 18 months, 2 years, that began to sort of fall apart, and you very quickly then found that both parties racing to differentiate themselves. And I think what they actually need to do, both parties, I think, is that they need to decide, perhaps now, what their narrative is going to be for the 2015 general election and say that is going to define our political strategy for the next 3 years, and to be consistent and stick to that so that they've got a coherent story to tell come the general election.
I think if I had to pick my favourite anecdote from the book, it's definitely in the chapter about photo opportunities. Joe Grimond, then Liberal Party leader, on a campaign tour, visits a constituency in Scotland to be photographed with the Liberal candidate for the constituency. Photo gets taken, photo op apparently has all gone well, except for one disastrous mistake, which was rather than being photographed with the Liberal candidate by some incredible administrative cock-up, he actually ended up being photographed with the Labour candidate for the constituency. Big mistake.
It's no good trying to sell people the largest vegetable marrow then.
Well, yes, that's, you have to buy the book and read it to find our tip about what you can learn from vegetable marrows about winning elections.